Hey, everybody, on this episode of the Athletic Potential Podcast, we are going to be interviewing the one and the only Chloe Temples. Now, this is an interview that I've been long overdue and I've been trying to set up, and she just got back a few months ago from playing professional softball in Texas during the summer. We're going to be diving deep into journeys of elite athletes and their road to success. Chloe's journey has taken her through two incredible programs, Stetson University and then BYU, where she made her mark as a dominant force on the mound. At Stetson, she pitched 29 complete games, showcasing her endurance and skill by recording 88 strikeouts in just over 122 innings. After 2 seasons at Stetson, Chloe made her move to BYU, where she quickly became an integral part of their pitching staff. Her coaches admired not only her performance on the field, which was exceptional, but also the positive attitude and leadership she brought to the team. In this episode, Chloe's going to share key moments in her development as a pitcher, how she navigated the challenges of transferring schools, and what it takes to elevate your game to the D1 level. We're also going to explore the mental and physical aspects of competing at the highest levels of college softball. Plus, we're going to get to know a little bit more about Chloe than I even knew working with her for the past year plus. So, anyways, we're excited for this. If you're an aspiring athlete or simply just a fan of the sport, you don't want to miss out on this episode. There's a lot of gold in this episode. Be ready to take some notes and learn a lot that's going to help advance your career. Welcome to the Athletic Potential Podcast, your place to come and get answers to your athletic development questions. We cover a range of topics, all related to helping you to achieve your athletic goals so that you can experience and enjoy the athletic career that you deserve. I am your host, Dr. Mike Matthews. Hey, welcome, Chloe. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I just want to get the biggest take you had from what was the difference in jumping from college softball to professional softball. What was the biggest difference between the two?
The biggest difference for me was just the level of play. I feel like it was really competitive, but at the same time, I got to play a bunch of different girls that I've watched, maybe that were older than me, that I wasn't old enough to play against in college, or just people from the SEC or the ACC, people from Florida State. I'm only an hour from there, so I know a lot of girls that played there. And seeing how the style of play has evolved, I feel like with a lot of the girls my age that were fresh into the league, there's a pitching style that I would like to go with when I attack them, a general pitching style. And then with the older girls, it kind of seemed like the opposite. And so it was kind of cool to just see how fast the sport has evolved and how pitching has had to evolve to keep up with all the hitting and how great hitting has become. And so that I feel like that was the biggest adjustment, but also just kind of a fun thing. I think it was more of a wide variety and different styles of play that I got to see in the league.
Awesome. Yeah, professional softball is not too common, and so it's kind of fun to talk to a professional softball player, especially after just a few months ago, maybe getting out for that season. So, but I'll be honest, the biggest question I always get from our youth athletes, softball players, baseball players, really doesn't matter. But the biggest question I normally always get is like, hey, how does someone like you go from where they're at, maybe 10U, 11, 12U, playing in softball tournaments, maybe on a rec team or maybe even comp softball? How do they go from that level all the way to the Division I level? So if you don't mind, can you just kind of lay out your path, like who you played for, when did you start playing comp softball? How many teams did you play for? How many travel tournaments? Like, you don't have to go crazy into details, but I just love to kind of get a progression of your career that eventually led you getting recruited and then going to Stetson and then eventually to BYU. So if you just maybe give us a little bit of a roadmap there, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I feel like my journey to college sports was very different. I know a lot of my teammates in college, they played for big time travel ball names and they had coaches that everybody kind of knew. And I feel like softball, just like everything else, is kind of about who knows who and having good connections. And I'm from the middle of nowhere. And so the closest big time travel ball team is like 4 hours. And you have to go to weekly practices. I have 3 siblings, so my parents were not able to do that. And honestly, it because it was such a struggle to kind of break into the connections and getting to know people and getting recruited, I really regretted a lot of that and wishing that I had played competitive travel ball. But then I get into college and I hear some of these horror stories from some of my teammates, and I was like, man, I played for just some local team and we had the best time ever. We were good, we were competitive, and I just had such a great experience, and now I'm kinda shifted back the other way, like, I found my own personal path, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So, I started when I was 8, I played City League, I sat the bench even though my dad was a coach, I was not very good. And so, I remember being in right field for one of our games, and we were, like, the worst team of all 5 of us, and we were just walking people in, and we couldn't throw a strike, and I was out there, and I was just like, "You know what? If nobody wants to do it and nobody cares to throw a strike, like, I'm just gonna figure out how to do it." And so I went home, and I got this, like, little 6-foot net that we had, and I just started throwing, like, bowling ball throwing it, and once I finally got my first one in the actual net and not miss, I called my parents out there, and I was like, "You gotta see this, guys." And from there, my dad really just took off with it, and he was big on watching YouTube and going into these forums and everything and helping me because, like I said, we don't have a lot of resources when we live in the middle of nowhere. And so, it was kinda just me and him for a long time, and I think we fared pretty well, I would like to think, and got into high school, and I was at the age where before there were a lot of restrictions on when you could get recruited, and I just remember getting to high school, and they're like, "Well, if you haven't been recruited by 8th grade, you're not gonna get recruited." So I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm kinda behind and freaking out." And so I eventually got seen at one of these showcase tournaments nearby, and it was a D2 school in Georgia, like 2 hours away from me, and I actually committed there. Not a lot of people know that, and so I committed there, and ended up there were a lot of issues, like half the team quit after a season, and so I was just not feeling great about it. So I decommitted, even though it was very risky. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of connections still. My parents were very nervous for me, but I just, like, decided that was the path I was gonna take, and so did that, went out to a BYU camp, went out to a few other camps, and landed on Stetson, which is near Orlando, and played there for 2 years. I talked to BYU a lot in high school, and at the very end, they were just kinda like, "Yeah, we're just not gonna go with you," and so but they told me things to work on, and so even though I was, like, trying to be all in at Stetson, and I felt like I was still in the back of my mind trying to get better at those things. If anybody told me I had to get better at something and it was a college coach I respected, I would do that, and, things just didn't work out there. I entered the transfer portal, contacted Eakin again, and luckily they remembered me, and the rest is history. But I feel like for me, yeah, it was just even though I didn't play for a big travel ball team, it was advocating for myself and messaging these coaches and going to their camps and talking to them while I was there and doing things like that, and that's what really helped me. And yeah, and then I finished out at BYU, so
So something that I noticed when you were talking about that, you mentioned initially, when you were learning how to pitch with a net in your backyard, which is awesome, that your dad became an advocate for you. So, but I'm more curious in the sense that you found your way into like talking with these coaches for these college coaches, right? So, how much? And I get this question, and I'll be honest, I get it from the parents, and the parents is how much communication should I have in regard to my player with colleges? Should it only come from the player? And so I guess my question to you is how much of the communication to those colleges, maybe trying to find camps, those type of things was done just by you? Did your dad reach out? Did your mom reach out? Like how did that communication go?
yeah, so when I was younger in, like, 8th grade, 9th grade, it was mostly my dad signing me up for the camps and talking to the people beforehand, and then obviously I would try to go talk to him while I was there. But then once I was in 11th grade, I started doing it myself just because I felt like it looked better, it looked like I was more mature and able to handle my own business. And I could keep tabs, cause I mean, it's my life. I didn't want my dad to be signing me off for something that I didn't know about. So, for me, I just started taking over it. I know there's a lot more restrictions with that now, but I'm pretty yeah, I think it's same thing when you get into 11th grade, you're able to talk to them once you're at a certain age. And so I think personally it comes off better if you do it yourself. It comes off like you're more mature and you've got your ducks in a row and you know what you're doing. And like I said, it never hurts to send I've sent many emails that were not responded to. And I'm not offended by it. At least I took the shot. I think the more emails you can send, the better, and I think it's very important to send them if you're going to a camp, so that way you can kinda go ahead and be on their radar, add some clips of what you look like and everything, how your style of play, so that way they can go ahead and know what they're looking for when you get there versus just coming up and being another number on your shirt and then not saying anything till the end. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think you naturally, having gotten to know you over the last few years, like, this is totally your style. Like, you're very proactive, you're very, go get it type of personality, which I think, but you're also extremely humble at the same time. So I think something to just to point out about what you just said is you're the one who kind of took the reins there and just said, look, we're going to do
mm,
this. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to be the one. I'm going to, before I go to this camp, I'm going to email. I'm going to communicate. It's going to be coming from me. So that way when I get there, and then when you get there, you also introduce yourself. You found your way to the coaches to make sure that they knew who you were, and that basically set up what I would consider, and this is something that we've talked to a lot of our athletes about, is, you can talk a big game. Hey, you can send videos of who you are and, your highlight reels and all that kind of stuff. But realistically, your performance has to speak for itself. But you can still prime your performance by making sure the coaches have all appropriate relevant information. So I think one of the key things you just said there was be very
mhm,
proactive, take the initiative, and also don't be afraid of failure. If you don't get responses back, that's okay.
yes.
It's awesome. So we're going to go back a little bit in time before college. So at what age would you say, and yeah, at what age would you say is that where you really started noticing softball was something, one, that you really liked, and two, that you were pretty good at?
Yeah, so, like I said, my first year I was a bench warmer, so I don't think I was really I don't know exactly when I realized I was good. I just knew that I loved competing, and like I said, I couldn't stand standing out there in right field and watching people walk into home plate. I think that's kinda where it started, was my competitiveness and my drive, and once my dad saw how serious I was, we'd go out every day to the mirror, and they would turn the lights out on us, and my dad's just biggest thing, because I was a foot shorter than everyone too at the time, so he really didn't think I could pitch at first, but I was like, "No, that we're gonna do this," and we that's what we did, and we just put our head down, and my dad's favorite thing to tell me when I was little was, like, "Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard." Just because I was coming out there, I was literally a head shorter than everyone. I had those sports goggles where they make cool looking ones. I had my bow the size of my head that my mom put in my hair. I was not I didn't look like I had the talent, but I think the competitiveness really drove me, and then I got in middle school, and I think that's kinda when I was getting some more traction. I was like, "Okay, like, maybe have something here." And I just kept on with it. I don't think I was focused so much on, "Oh, I have to achieve this, and I have to get here and get this scholarship." I just loved competing, and I loved going out every day and fixing my mechanics and thinking, what can I do today to be better?" And I think that's kinda what helped me just gradually get better and start to get those eyes on me. I actually think when I got in college and started worrying about stats and I gotta get this accolade, I think that's when I started to not like the game and honestly not play as well because it just became suffocating. And so even at the end of my career, I had to go back to that little girl and like my glove was inspired by young version of me this year just to compete and to not worry about numbers and fall in love with just going out there every day and thinking, "What can I do to get a little bit better today?" And I think that's just kinda how my mindset going throughout my career, and that's how I got fell in love with the game and started to get a little bit of attention as I got older.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, yeah, it sounds like, I mean, You could tell. I mean, even at BYU and in a Division I level, it's definitely a higher pressure situation. In higher level athletics can be very challenging. You can have school schedules that are really just kind of bury you, those type of things. And I mean, your school. I don't know how you did it with your school schedule, with going to med school or trying to go to med school, and then still be able to compete in the Big 12. We'll may get into a little bit of that, but so one of the questions I want to ask is, maybe let's step away from softball as a kid. So say when you were 10, 11, 12, maybe even into like teenage years, were you just softball player? Did you play other sports?
I played all kinds of sports in middle school and high school, which I loved personally. Like I said, a lot of my friends were like, my parents made me play travel ball, softball all the time. And I honestly think just playing other sports was really good for my mindset, like I said, and just getting to go do something for fun. I was still 100% softball all the way in middle school and high school. That's what I took serious. But I played volleyball. I did cross country. I was not good at it, but I did it. And I did cheer, I did dance, and all that was just really fun. And I think it honestly just helped keep me grounded. And so I could still go out and I could work really, really hard playing softball, but still kinda know that not my whole life isn't invested in this, I'm more than just softball. So I actually think it helped me be able to continue working hard and not feel the effects of burnout. Because especially in college, it is all you do, and I think sometimes you can get that feeling like, "Oh my gosh, like, I better do good here, this is all I got going for me," and that's so not true. And so, yeah, I played all kinds of sports, and I really loved it whenever I was in elementary school and grade school.
Did you play any other sports into high school?
I did cross country reluctantly, and I was forced into that my freshman year, and then I was too prideful to quit, so I ended up doing it for all 4 years. So and I did dance. My sister taught me into doing dance. My sister forced me into both of those, but I ended up liking dance a lot, and it was just a fun sport where totally different from softball, obviously. And yeah, that was what I did throughout high school specifically.
That's awesome. That's I mean, if you look at backgrounds, and this is something we've researched quite a bit, is those athletes, and we were specifically looking at Division I softball players, actually Division I female athletes at that time. We were looking at the amount that had played sports into high school, and it was an overwhelming majority. I think it was greater than 80%. Now, this wasn't like published data or
Mm,
anything like that, but this is just, we had a sample size of athletes, and what we found was, yeah, those that made it to the Division I level did some other type of athletic event, sport. In your case, it would be dance and maybe cross country, and they did that all the way up to through the high school level. And yeah, it's kind of interesting how many of those Division
yeah.
I collegiate athletes were multiple sport athletes in high school. So yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know you did dance that
I
long.
did.
What
I
kind of
also wasn't
dance?
that great
What
at
kind
it
of dance?
either, but I got better with time. Yes. I think it helped keep me well balanced. So, learn some new
That
skills. And
was there any like particular type of dance that you
it
did?
was mostly just down there on the sidelines for football games, doing little dances with the band, cheers and everything. I feel like I was much better at cheer, and I was because I did
Okay.
gymnastics when I was little, and so I was all about the tumbling and everything. And so dance was more
Okay.
fluid and moving your hips, and I struggled with that a lot, but it was really fun at the same time. I got better as time went on.
Nice. Awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, I did not know your dance history. That's always fun to kind of learn new things. So let's kind of return a little bit back. This is, again, I try to go back to the questions I consistently get on this podcast. And one of them is the recruiting process. Now, we've already kind of made mention that you reached out via email, and a lot of the time it's, when I'm looking for your opinion on this, but when do you feel like colleges, when do you feel like college coaches are looking the most at these athletes? Is it like at a high school level, like a freshman, sophomore, junior? I know that's when they can start speaking to them on the junior side, like junior year type thing. But do you think they're looking sooner than that? Because a lot of parents are asking the question of, okay, when do we really, if we haven't been talked to yet, when is it a bad thing,
Mhm.
right? And so, just based on your opinion, based on talking to other girls in Division I level and when they got recruited, and obviously your past, when do you think parents should start going, yeah, we're not getting any looks right now? When would that be a problem?
Yeah. I think now with all the rules, high school is a great time to go ahead and kinda get in those tournaments and get seen and get your name out there just so you can be in the back of their mind. Because I know even at BYU, they have, like, this huge chart, and they have people with their names on there and their teams and their year, and I know they're not all juniors and seniors. There's a few people that they try to, keep in mind as they go throughout, and so I feel like high school is a good time to go ahead and, like I said, prime them and get your name out there through playing in these camps or tournaments if you're able to play big time travel ball and all that. And then once you're able to talk to them yourself your junior year, I would hit the ground running, like I said, and send those emails. I know it's so scary because I was scared, and then honestly, the more rejection you get, the less scary it is. And you're just like, shoot, I'm just gonna send it. Like, there's no point in not sending it at this point and still going to those camps and those tournaments. And when you can build those relationships, when you can kind of get in there and build those relationships, then you can have more of their respect and they can talk to you about where they're at. And like I said, I didn't play big time travel ball, but I know that was a big help for a lot of my friends that played at big BYU. Their coaches know a lot of the college coaches and are able to help you out as well. So if that's an opportunity for whoever's listening, I'd say take it if you like it. If you enjoy playing big time travel ball, do it. I just personally couldn't because there's no opportunities close by. But yeah, the camps I think are the biggest. I wouldn't get too concerned because it's a funny thing. I've seen a lot of people get recruited a month before signing day because you never know what's gonna happen, especially with all the transferring and everything going on. They never know exactly what they're gonna need. I would just stay persistent, be annoying. They're really busy and they got a lot of people they gotta talk to, so don't be scared to follow up with people. I know a girl that played at a rival high school. She also didn't play big time travel ball, being from the middle of nowhere, same as me. And she's one of the best players at FSU right now. And she just went to camps and continuously went to camps and I think built that relationship with them. And so, like I said, you just gotta make those connections and make them know you. Don't be scared to be a little bit pushy if you have to with those emails.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely. I mean, you've seen it because you've been, as a part of the program, and I've been able to be part of the program at BYU a little bit, and talk to the coaching staff. They're on both sides of the ball. So that's baseball, softball. They are extremely busy, and the amount of text messages and phone calls that each one of the coaches fields is immense. It is quite immense, and some even have assistants that their whole job is just to make sure that they're contacting
Mhm,
people. And I think you're right. I think you're right. If you don't, someone's got to be kind of giving them information about you. If that's a coach, if that's a mentor, or I don't know. But the idea is that you've got to pop up on their radar. And I think a lot of times I've had conversations in the past with some athletes, and they say, "Well, I sent an email," and I go, "I guarantee you that guy got
mhm.
500 emails today. It's recruiting season. The guy's probably got 500 to 600 in there. How is he going to look at your email and be like, 'That's the kid I want to see'?" And and it's not just emails; it's other ways to communicate. And yeah, the recruiting process is really tricky, and I don't have all the answers, but it's always interesting to hear insights from those that have been there, have done it, and have essentially been in the programs, watching other, recruits come in, and those type of
Mhm.
things. So, but I appreciate your insights on that. But yeah, I think you're right. You got to be
Yes.
persistent, and I think the other thing would be it's persistent, but that you're also showing them in ways that you're trying to improve, that you want to be
Mhm.
there, and you're pursuing them as much as that you want them to pursue you. And I think if you show that you'll just kind of rise more to the top, and they'll be a little bit more cognizant of who you are and where you're at.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, definitely.
all right.
It took a while to get BYU to respond to me my first time, but my second time when I transferred, they responded quickly because I think they knew my name by then, and yeah, I was at BYU
Yeah.
because I was persistent. Dang.
Well, and it speaks to something that we've already mentioned before, but I'll mention it again. Just because they didn't reach out to you, you're junior, immediately when the time opened up for them to communicate. it doesn't mean this day and age in college athletics with the transfer portal
Mhm.
and NIL and all those type of things can change extremely
Yes.
quickly. We've had athletes that weren't even quite sure where they were going to be going to school. I mean, just now we've had athletes that we were basically waiting for a call from one of three colleges, and it was a month before two of those colleges started class. And it was like they didn't know, and they got calls from
Yeah.
both, and then they had to decide where to go,
Yeah.
and so it's just the nature because, as transfer portal is turned the game into what it is, which is good or bad, is what it is. But anyways, that was great insight. I really appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
So let's ask this question. So I think it'll pertain a little bit to the when you get to the high school level and maybe some of the higher level club ball, but let's talk more specifically to college. Once you made it to the college level, what was like the biggest adjustment or challenge that you faced compared to that lower level of high school ball?
So, for me, I think it was the adjustment was that, okay, like, this is all I'm doing now. This is even though I feel like I worked really, really hard in high school, it's just different. And you're getting up as for 6 a.m. weights, you're going to class, and you're going straight to practice. It becomes more encompassing in your life, just all around with the meetings and everything. And I just remember sitting in the pitch black dark at like 5:30 in the morning on the curb, waiting for weights to start, and I was like, "Man, I don't know about this, like, this is very different than high school." And, just adjust to anything. If you started doing something more, it's like, "Ooh, like, do you like this?" And it was never really a question, it was just more of a, like, wake-up call. I think, like, this is very different than I just go to school, and then I get to go to my little high school practice at 3 p.m. and do a lot of practicing on my own, and like I said, go play on Saturday for fun, and it's just a lot more serious, and when it's all you do, like I said, you don't have other sports and things, it does have a way of getting to you a little bit more, and the seriousness of it, and just knowing, "Okay, I got it." You had those feelings like, "I gotta produce, I gotta make sure the coaches want me back," and things like that, and the competitiveness in high school, a lot of times you can kinda sit back and chill a little bit, and now it's like, "Oh, everybody's out. I'm not the only one staying after practice anymore. Everybody's staying after practice and getting extra cuts." And one, I really like that because you love being around people who are competitive when you're competitive, but it does have a way of kinda playing with your mind more than anything, personally, I feel like, because when you build things up in your head, it can sometimes make you scared out there and make you, like, pitch really tense or play really tense, whatever you do. And so I think the biggest adjustment for me was that, and then by combating it, I saw a therapist, a sports psychologist last season, and she kinda helped break down some of those false beliefs I had built in college, like, I can still be a lot of other things even though I don't have as much time, and I can still enjoy this even though it seems a little bit more serious and more is at stake. And so finding a good balance and find like, I like reading now. I found something else outside of softball. So, doing things like that to still find a balance, even though maybe you don't have as much time for things outside softball, still finding something. So that way it doesn't become all encompassing whenever things are going rough for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just gave some absolute gold out for those that can take to any level, especially as you get into the higher levels and those type of things. But is that you had to pull additional resources in to make sure that you could still be on your game. And you're someone who did very well. Like you performed very well at high levels. I mean, the your statistics already have shown it, but you've been able to perform at high levels. And but I think it's interesting, and I think it's I wanna make it very clear to those listening that you had to go out and seek out resources that so that you could maintain that same level of play, and it took some help,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that. I tell everybody, just because you can't go out and play like you did in high school, that's normal. I
Yeah.
mean, college is a completely different game, and you need to make sure that you use all the available resources to make sure that you can still go out and play with the same type of aggressive mentality and play loose and still make it a game, but also be able to perform at those higher levels. And
Mhm.
I was going to ask you, what was it that you did to allow yourself to perform at the high level like you did? And I think you answered that, which is great. So I think it's important for people to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my biggest
And
regrets is not using resources, and I feel like a lot of people are very prideful. So I would always say they have the resources for a reason, and it's a very big opportunity to have those resources for free. So I would use them because even when I went to the first sports psychology session, I was kind of like, I don't have time, and it ended up being the greatest thing ever for me, and I loved going after that.
yep, it's good. It's good. So, all right. So we've talked a little bit on field. We talked about kind of the process. So, as a part of, let's stay on field for just a minute, but let's talk about this. So, predominantly, you were a starter. What was your mindset going in to say you're getting warmed up and getting ready to go into a game? What was your like? Maybe walk us through your normal routine. And I'm a little more interested on just like what your thought process was. Were you like, did you have a select routine? Did you visualize? Did you do any of those type of things, or was it, hey, just stay loose, just have some fun, or were you? I'm just curious because I feel like this is a question I get a lot of different answers to. So I'm curious what your pregame, pre-start routine was.
Yeah. So for me personally, I am just a very technical player. I I don't throw the ball super fast. I'm very big on spinning it and I love watching the mechanics. Super nerdy. I bring physics into it. And so I'm just very technical and I love to think and sometimes that can work against me out there. I realized especially as I got older. And so for me, when I feel like I'm at my best, it's when I dial it down. I've done all the nerdy stuff beforehand in practice to make myself better, hone in my mechanics, and now it's just about feel, especially during the game. So I have a routine and it does adjust based off of the game and how I feel. I try to assess myself. Sometimes I'm like, okay, you gotta get hyped right now, or and you gotta get through this game. Or sometimes I'm like, okay, like I need to take a deep breath and calm down. And so for me, I one of the biggest things that helped me the most, especially this past year, was I like to do like a kind of body meditation while I visualize. So I like to sit and I'll do it before I warm up and I'll do it in between innings. And I just kind of sit there and I'll even do it in between pitches if I feel like I'm getting tense. And I like work my way down from like my head, my shoulders, all the way down to my toes. And if I feel like something's tight, which is usually my shoulders, I just imagine like breathing into that spot and just like letting out all the tension. And then I'll go through visualizing. I feel like visualizing is just so good. I don't need to think about a million things, I'm just watching it happen in my mind and watching where the ball goes, and then my routine once I get out on the mound, I I like to draw a circle to the side, and I stand in it for a second, and that was something I started doing at the end, and it was kinda like my version of, like, "You can't touch me," like, this is the I'm here, and, like, I'm kinda imagining like I have, safety net around me. This is my bubble. 'Cause one of my biggest things is when things started going bad, I would think about, "Oh, what is coach thinking? Or what is so and so thinking about me right now? And what are these girls over here saying?" And just getting out away from myself. And so I like to stand in that circle when I feel myself getting overwhelmed, and I'm just like, "Okay, like, this is my soundproof bubble right here. Nothing can come in here. Nothing can come get me." And that it's like it sounds silly, but it just helped calm me down and keep me grounded and not let my mind fly off to all the bad things that wanna creep in whenever especially in tense situations. And when I get on the mound, I just have keywords, which sometimes change depending on the day. It might be just snap. And so that way I can just focus on like 2 or 3 keywords versus trying to take in every little thing that I'm doing. So that's me. I just everything I do is more trying to just simplify it and let my brain relax out there.
Well, I think that is fantastic. Like most a lot of people watch the game and they see in between pitches and can maybe flip the ball into your glove here and there, and it is such a complex game, and especially such a mind game. But the insight there is fantastic, and I think the key is that you found really what was a negative in regards to your performance, and you created a tool or found a tool that worked for you to get rid of it or to be able to manage it, and it did so before game, during game, but also, like, literally between
Mhm.
pitches, which is really cool. So, just something for the youth players to take out there is that I if you just kinda simplify the game, you go back to the basics. Most time, more often than not, your body will take over, and you'll be able to perform and do the things you need to do without getting too over analytical. So that's great. I'm not overly shocked, Chloe, to know that you were, more on the nerd side of things, but it's cool that you're like your whole job was to bring everything back down
Yeah.
to simplicity, which is great. So, all right. So a couple more questions. I would say I'm more curious. So you've been through all of this now. You've gone through, the youth ball all the way up to high school ball, the college ball, and then professional. If you could go back to yourself, say when you're 11, 12 years old, having gone through everything you just did, so everything you know now, what would you tell a 12-year-old version of Chloe Temples?
Ooh, I would tell her to just compete and to keep it within the lines. I think, like I said, that was my biggest goal this past year. After my little labrum tear and everything, I think I just got so mental, and I had a really good year. I, like, had a little record-breaking thing at the same game I tore my labrum, and so I think that messed with my head a lot, and I just kept thinking, "I gotta get back here, and people are expecting me to break this record even more." Like, I just got so consumed with the numbers and everything and what other people were thinking, and I think when I became better is when I just kept it brought it back to myself, because ultimately it's a game, and I'm out here because I love it. I'm not here because it's paying for my school. Well, I can pay for school another way if with my grades, like, I never thought of it like, "Oh, this is my job," because I feel like that's when it became miserable. I think of it like, "This is something I really, really love to do. I love to come out here and compete, and I don't care if I don't have the best game per se on the paper. All that matters is that I had a good time, my team won. All that matters at the end of the day is the win." And so I think that would be what I would tell myself, keep it simple and just stay in love with competing. I think that's what made me love it, and going back to that was what made me love it at the end again.
That's excellent. That's excellent, excellent. I neglected to ask this question earlier, but at any point did you start doing like strength conditioning? When did you start your strength conditioning? Was that college? Was that high school? Younger
So I've
or
been mega into lifting for since I was in high school. As soon as I turned 16 and could drive, I got a gym membership and I got mega into it, did the meal prep and everything. And I was super duper, like, had a little 4 pack. I was so proud of myself. But I think I was doing it more like the bodybuilder, the way I was everything you look online is more for looking good and not for how to perform well. So I don't think I was doing it right. Then I tried to change it and adjust it to be more set to playing softball and how what I can do to help myself perform better on the field. I've always been super into that, and even when I help younger girls, I do a lot of stuff with, like, workouts and plyometrics because I think that's so important into helping you learn how to have power, how to use your body the correct way. Even with working with you, like, that's just such a big thing for me now, and something I even try to make sure my girls are doing, like, with their arms and how we gotta keep our scapula not poked out. And so, I think all that stuff is great. Like, I just love figuring out how can I be more powerful and do things like that. So, yeah, it's been a big part of my playing career ever since I was 16.
awesome. So we'll go a little more away from these kind of more of these professional questions and about your career, but I want to ask two questions, and then I think we'll be all set for today. First one is, what was probably the funniest thing that ever happened to you on a softball field?
The funniest? Whew. Oh my goodness. Okay. This is just the first one that comes to mind. I'm sure I've done plenty of things to, like, embarrass myself out there, but this was my first year playing, and like I said, I wasn't good, and so I just had this, like, one lucky game, and I hit a triple, and right before I got to 3rd, I fell flat on my face, and they tagged me out, so I'm, like, devastated 'cause this is, like, my
Oh,
first, like, real hit, right? And so I'm like, my one chance, and I blew it. I just fell flat on my face, so I get up again, I proceed to do the same thing, so I'm mega excited. So I round 3rd and I fall and they catch me. So I was thinking it wasn't funny at all at the time, but my family still laughs about it because it's just funny to think about wow, like, that's where I started. I was not the kid that came out and everybody was like, "This girl's got potential." And so I feel like that was one of my funnier moments from earlier in my career, and it's just funny to think about how far I've come from not being able to stand on my feet while running. Dang.
I think every athlete who's had whatever length of career has at least one or two of those stories just falling
Same.
flat on your face. I have at least two for another day, but they were just it's just fun to kind of look back, and it always kind of reminds us it's a game.
Mhm.
You know, you're there to play and have some fun. So it's fun to know that even top level athletes like you still fall on their face
Yes.
and and make fools of themselves. But all right, so then if you're not playing softball, and I know you're at this point going to school and all those kind of things, but what's your go-to hobby? What's the thing that interests you the most just to go and do and to have fun?
So I'm still really into working out, but I don't really consider that a hobby. But I love to go for walks. And now that I'm home, I'll do that with my mom. And I also, like I mentioned, I love reading. I hated reading in grade school because when we did the little tests, I they told me I was a slow reader, so of course I'm like, "Well, I don't like it then if I suck at it." And I picked it up last summer while I was, like, studying for the MCAT, and there's a hard reading section, so I was like, "Well, maybe I'll just read a book and it'll help me get faster." And I ended up loving it. And so my little sister and I, we have a book club amongst us 2. So whenever she's home, we'll light a candle and we'll put on, like, an ambiance on the TV, and it's just our, like, little nerdy thing we like to do. We're reading a fantasy book now that we're obsessed with, and we have matching hoodies for the book. So I'm, like, full blown, like, going all out on the nerdiness, and I don't know, it's just really fun because I love softball so much, but it's been really fun to find something I love that isn't in that same area. Like, I love working out, I love playing, like, that's kinda my niche. And it's just been fun to find something, like, very totally different than my normal go-to things, and so I would definitely say reading is my top hobby right now. Thanks.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, I think you've definitely portrayed yourself as I know you, and that is, utter professional and kind of everywhere you are. So on the field, you were just an ultimate competitor. It was always fun to watch you compete. When you're off the field, when you're working with me and those type of things, you worked really hard. You did everything we asked you to do, and you did it in a way that professionals do, and it shows. And it's also nice to see the side of you where you're full nerd and just enjoying hobbies and just who you are. But I mean, I would just say to add, the only thing in that I would like to add, just to kind of maybe brag on you a little bit, is that the intensity and the focus that you brought to the game, and you made it look easy.
Thank
And it's not something that you can see or that you can really train really well unless you've been through a lot and then you've just learned to do it over time. And that is something that you've you definitely had showed on the field, off the field, and everywhere else you go. And I'm sure it's going to just carry you throughout life and make you really successful. So,
you.
but I do appreciate you coming onto the podcast and kind of sharing some insight for everybody, and really appreciate it. I hope you continue forward, whatever else is going to happen next, and getting into school. I know you're applying to med schools and those type of things. So you're not done with school yet. There's a lot left there for you, but yeah, it's going to be, I have no doubt you'll be successful. So I appreciate you coming on the
Thank you.
podcast.
Thank you for having me. I can now relive my glory
Yeah.
days, and that was awesome.
Yeah. Well, those are some pretty good glory days.
Thank you.
So nice job. All right. Well, we'll catch up to you next time. Okay.
Awesome.
Everybody, just want to say thank you for listening to the Athletic Potential Podcast. If you do have questions for the podcast, please visit the website, www.athletic-potential.com/podcast. You'll find a button there to ask your question. Please input your information and your question, and we will answer any and all questions we get. And thank you again for listening. If you do get a chance, please rate and review the podcast. And until next time, thanks.